You know what it feels like to be too much and not enough at the same time. To walk into a room and feel the eyes on you, waiting for brilliance or disaster. Never sure which you'll deliver. Never sure which one is really you. There's a part of you that builds empires just to prove you exist. That speaks louder because whispers disappear. That creates relentlessly because stillness feels like drowning. And there's another part, quieter, hidden, that wonders. If you stop performing, would anyone stay? This is the psychology of the wounded creator. The person who turns pain into art, grief into innovation, trauma into empire. The one who flies so close to the sun, they forget they're burning. And whether you've heard his music or not, you understand this pattern. Because you've lived some version of it too. Kanye West isn't just a musician or a celebrity, he's a mirror. He's the wounded genius who lost the one person who made him feel real, and spent the rest of his life trying to fill that space with albums, with fashion lines, with declarations of godhood. He's the boy who felt invisible, becoming the man who demands to be seen, always, everywhere, at any cost. He's manic creation and public collapse. He's the prophet nobody understands and the villain everyone condemns. He's Icarus in Yeezys, flying higher and higher, knowing the fall is coming but unable to stop rising. And his story asks the question you've been asking yourself in the quiet moments. What happens when your greatest gift becomes the thing that isolates you most? This isn't really about Kanye. It's about what happens when you build a life on top of an unhealed wound. When you turn grief into productivity, fear into ego, loneliness into empire. When you become so extraordinary that you forget how to belong. It's about the perfectionist who can't rest. The performer who can't take off the mask. The self-saboteur who burns it all down right before it gets too good. You carry this pattern too. Maybe quietly, maybe loudly. Maybe you recognize it in the way you work yourself to exhaustion. In the relationships you destroy right when they get close. In the person you pretend to be versus the one you are when no one's watching. The psychology of Kanye West is the psychology of unmetabolized grief, narcissistic compensation, and creative brilliance built on a foundation of terror. And if you look closely, you'll see yourself in the wreckage. Imagine you're standing on a stage. 100,000 people chant your name. The lights are blinding. The bass vibrates through your ribs. You feel everything and nothing. You've spent years building this moment, proving you're worth seeing, worth hearing, worth remembering. But underneath the lights, there's a quiet thought. Would she be proud? Your mother, the one who left, the one you couldn't save, the one whose love felt like gravity. And without it, you've been floating, untethered, manic. You keep building. Albums, empires, declarations, hoping the next thing will finally fill the space. But nothing does, so you build bigger. You speak louder, you shock harder, because if you stop, you'll feel the truth. You're still the child who lost too much. And no amount of genius changes that. When Kanye lost his mother Donda in 2007, something broke that never healed. She wasn't just his parent, she was his secure base. The one person whose love didn't require performance. And when she died, especially in circumstances tangled with guilt and regret, the wound wasn't just grief, it was rupture. Attachment theory tells us that our early bonds shape how we seek connection for the rest of our lives. Lose that secure base and you develop anxious attachment, a desperate hunger for validation paired with terror of abandonment. You start performing for everyone, hoping someone will fill the space. But no amount of applause sounds like her voice. You become addicted to validation because you're looking for the one person who's gone. You push people away before they can leave because losing her taught you love is not permanent, and so you stop risking it. You perform intimacy. You build monuments to her memory, but you never let yourself feel the loss long enough to heal it. Maybe you know this pattern. Maybe you lost someone too early or too suddenly, or in a way that left you holding guilt you can't put down. Maybe you've been running from stillness ever since, because stillness is where the grief lives, and if you stop moving, you'll have to feel it. So you build yourself larger than life. You shout your greatness because if you whisper, no one listens. This is narcissistic compensation, the grandiose self as a shield. Underneath is the belief, I am not enough as I am. Kanye came from middle-class Chicago, not the streets that gave other rappers credibility, not the wealth that gave moguls power. He was too soft, too educated, too other. So he compensated by becoming more louder, bolder, richer, more controversial. "I am a god," he declared. Not because he believed it in his bones, but because the boy inside him was terrified no one would notice him otherwise. You do this too in your own way. You inflate your accomplishments. You dominate conversations. You make yourself unforgettable because you're afraid of being forgotten. But inside, there's a quiet voice that says, if they really knew me, would they stay? So you never let them in. You create a character, a genius, a rebel, a success story, anything but the soft, scared person underneath. And the loneliness grows. Because people love the character. But the character isn't you. You feel most alive when you're moving too fast to feel. This is the manic defense, the way some minds protect themselves from unbearable pain by staying in motion, in creation, in chaos. Kanye has bipolar disorder. His manic episodes fuel creative explosions, entire albums in weeks, fashion lines, architectural dreams. He works in bursts of divine inspiration, producing brilliance at a pace that seems superhuman. But mania isn't just creativity. It's also impulsivity, grandiosity, relational destruction. It's the mind's way of saying, if you keep moving, you won't have to feel what's underneath. People call you chaotic. But you're not chaotic, you're terrified. Because when you stop, you remember what you lost. So you don't stop. You create, you build, you burn bridges, you start over, anything to avoid the stillness where the pain lives. Until your body makes you stop. Until you collapse, crash, spiral. Until the depression comes, revealing the unbearable truth you've been outrunning. You can't fix this with genius. You can't create your way out of grief. But you keep trying. You tear apart what you create and rebuild it, over and over, hoping this time it will finally feel complete. This is maladaptive perfectionism, the belief that you are only valuable if you are flawless. Kanye's mother was an English professor. High standards, intellectual rigor, expectations. He dropped out of college to pursue music, carrying the weight of disappointing her. And now, even after her death, he can't let anything be good enough. He re-records albums obsessively, changes release dates last minute, scraps projects and starts over. Nothing ever reaches the standard in his head because the standard isn't about the work, it's about proving his worth. You can't enjoy what you create because you're already seeing the flaws. You're already tearing it apart in your mind, wondering why it doesn't feel like enough. But the emptiness isn't in the work, it's in you, and no masterpiece can fill that. Perfectionism isn't about excellence, it's about control. If you can just make it perfect, maybe you'll finally feel worthy, maybe you'll finally feel safe. But perfection is a moving target, and you're exhausted from chasing it. You wanted to be seen, and now you're always watched. This is the performer's paradox. Kanye spent years as a producer, invisible, uncredited, brilliant behind the scenes. When he finally became the star, he chased visibility like oxygen. But fame didn't heal the invisibility wound, it deepened it. Now millions see him, but no one knows him. Being watched isn't the same as being known. You perform intimacy, but you can't risk real vulnerability. What if they reject the real you? So you give them a spectacle instead. You give them the character they expect, confident, untouchable, larger than life, and the loneliness grows, even as the crowds get bigger. Maybe you feel this too. Maybe you've built a version of yourself for public consumption, the successful one, the put-together one, the one who has it figured out, and people love that version. But you're not that version. Not all the way, not in the quiet, not when the lights go off and you're alone with the person you've been performing around. You wonder, if you stop pretending, would anyone stay? You get close to having it all, and then you blow it up. This is trauma repetition, the unconscious pattern of recreating painful scenarios, attempting to master what once overwhelmed you. Kanye destroys what he builds: relationships, business partnerships, public goodwill. Each explosion follows the same arc. Build intimacy, feel vulnerable, attack first, lose everything, rebuild alone. He burned his marriage, his brand deals, his community. Not because he wanted to fail, but because failure is familiar. Success makes you vulnerable. What if they take it away? What if you lose it like you lost her? So you take it away first. You burn it down before it can leave you. And you tell yourself, at least this pain is yours to control. Self-sabotage is a defense. It's the part of you that says, I'd rather destroy this myself than watch it abandon me. Maybe you've done this. Maybe you've walked away from something good right when it started to feel real. Maybe you've picked fights, created dists, found reasons to leave before they could leave you. It's not that you don't want love, it's that you're terrified of losing it again. You turn your pain into something beautiful, and people applaud. But the applause doesn't touch the ache. This is unmetabolized grief, pain redirected into creation but never actually processed. After Donda's death, Kanye released 808s and Heartbreak, an album of pure grief. Vulnerable, raw, revolutionary. He turned his pain into art, and the world called it genius. But art doesn't heal what only presence can heal. You keep creating, hoping the next project will finally let you rest, hoping it will fill the hole she left, but it doesn't. Because grief doesn't resolve through productivity, it resolves through feeling. And you've been running from feeling for years. Maybe you do this too. Maybe you bury yourself in work, in projects, in constant motion, telling yourself you're being productive when really you're just avoiding the stillness where the loss lives. You're waiting for the project that will make it all make sense, but there is no project that can do that. There's only the grief you haven't let yourself hold. You've worn so many masks you forgot which face is yours. This is identity fragmentation, when external roles overwhelm the core self. When you become whoever the moment demands, and there's no stable center holding it together. Kanye has cycled through identities: producer, rapper, fashion designer, presidential candidate, prophet, villain. Each identity bold but none integrated. He's simultaneously genius and madman, visionary and pariah, and the fragmentation mirrors his internal chaos. Which version of me is real? Do I even exist without the performance? You felt this too. You're whoever the situation requires. Confident in meetings, vulnerable with friends, guarded with family, someone else entirely online. People see versions of you, but no one sees the whole. And you wonder, if you stop performing, would there be anything left? The masks were supposed to protect you, but now you can't remember what you were protecting. So here's the deeper question. Can you be extraordinary and still belong? Can you heal while the world watches? What do you do with a gift that isolates you? Kanye embodies the myth of Icarus, the one who flies too close to the sun, whose brilliance becomes his downfall. His wings are wax, his ambition is the heat. He knows the danger, but he can't stop rising, because falling is the only way he feels alive. This is the existential isolation of vision. When you see the world differently than everyone else, intimacy requires translation. And at some point, you stop translating. You demand people meet you where you are, and most can't. You think differently, feel differently, create differently, and it's lonely. You try to explain your inner world, but the words don't land. So you stop trying, you create instead. But creation is a monologue, and you're so tired of talking to yourself. The gift that makes you extraordinary is the same gift that isolates you, and you don't know how to reconcile that. But here's what Kanye's story, and maybe your story, is really about. You're not broken. You're human. The patterns you carry, the perfectionism, the self-sabotage, the masks, the running, they were survival mechanisms once. They kept you safe when you couldn't protect yourself any other way. But what once protected you now isolates you. And the hardest work isn't creating more. It's stopping long enough to feel what you've been running from. Genius doesn't require self-destruction. Grief doesn't have to be productive. You can create and heal. You can be extraordinary and belong. But it starts with the thing you've been avoiding: stillness, presence, the willingness to feel the grief you've been turning into empires. It starts with letting someone see you, not the performance, not the character, but the soft, scared person underneath. The one who lost too much. The one who's been trying to prove their worth ever since. You don't have to prove anything. You're already enough. You were always enough. The applause won't tell you that. The next project won't tell you that. Only you can. And maybe that's the real question. Can you love yourself the way you wish she still could? Can you hold your own grief with the tenderness it deserves? You don't have to fly so close to the sun. You don't have to burn to feel alive. You can land, you can rest, you can be human. And that, finally, might be enough.